Hello. I was talking to some people who sit in the balcony, and people have their, hey, the balcony people. And I sat there, I was wondering, okay, what is the experience like? So I came here for a different event. I forgot what it was. And I sat, and I see why you sit up there. Those are actually some really good seats in the balcony. And then there are people who sit in the front row. Hi there. And so people have different things. They have different reasons why they like to sit. We started sitting in the back only because we wanted to leave all of what we thought were all the choice seats to our guests. And we decided we actually liked sitting back there. And some people, they'll sit there, they don't like it, I don't know why you sit there. But I was thinking about all of that when I was thinking about this movie that we're going to see this afternoon, Wings of Desire, and how the angels in the movie are kind of all around. And I'm going to read from Roger's first paragraph of that movie. His writing is really just mesmerizing. The angels in Wings of Desire are not merely guardian angels placed on earth to look after human beings. They are witnesses, and they have been watching for a long time, since the beginning. Standing on a concrete riverbank in Berlin, they recall that it took a long time before the primeval river found its bed. They remember the melting of the glaciers. They are a reflection of the solitude of God, who created everything and then had no one to witness what he had done. The role of the angels is to see. Roger had a very spiritual side. He also, he wasn't really a religious person, but he had a religious background coming up, but a lot of the things that he talked about, and I think a lot of the things when he talks about empathy, he didn't like to say it, but I think it was kind of a mixture of the sort of religious background that he had, but of his spirituality and his innate goodness. And the guest that I'm going to bring out to talk about the movie, Michael Barker, the co-president and co-founder of Sony Pictures Classics. And even though Michael Barker has been here many times, I don't often read his stuff, so I want to bear with me for just a second. As co-president and co-founder of Sony Pictures Classics, which celebrated its 30th anniversary in 2022, Michael Barker, with Tom Bernard, has distributed and often produced some of the finest independent movies. Previously, he was an executive at United Artists and went on to co-found Orion Classics and Sony Pictures Classics. Excuse me. Over the span of his career, Barker's films have received 186 Academy Award nominations, including several for Best Picture: The Father, Call Me By Your Name, Whiplash, Amour, Midnight in Paris, and Education, Capote, and one of my other favorites, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Howard's End, and I could go on and on and on. I was privileged to present an award to Michael and Tom Bernard, given by women in film in Hollywood, because they did research and they said they found that Michael Barker and Tom Bernard had actually either discovered or made movies that were so kind of female-centric and that were responsible for the Academy Award nominations or awards in other areas too, of probably more women than any other independent film or even major studio in Hollywood. So please help me welcome Michael Barker, and he's going to introduce Wings of Desire.
It's so good to be back here. Where's Janet? Is Janet here? Janet Pearson. Where is she? Back there. I am here for two reasons. One is to present Wings of Desire, but the other reason I wanted to be here is that Janet Pearson, who you saw last night, who is a close personal and professional friend for a long time, maybe 40 years or 40 years, about right. She has recently retired from running South by Southwest, and she ran it for 15 years, and she really changed the dynamics of film and South by Southwest, and she really made it into an international presence, and she discovered so many filmmakers that came out of left field and became major that I think it's great that Chaz and Nate have brought her here to celebrate her. So I would really like to celebrate Janet Pearson. And of course, the other lady that brought me here is Chaz, who, those of you who know me know I've been very close to her and Roger for many, many years. And how many of you have seen this film? Oh, wow, that's great. Those people who have not seen this film, you're in for the most incredible experience. I have been in the motion picture business for a long time, and I have been involved with many films. This is my favorite film of any film I have ever been involved with or released. And there are a lot of reasons for that. When you and I go see a movie and we agree on a movie, it's because there are certain things in our tastes that are similar, or maybe our pasts, or how much we're involved with movies are similar. There's this idea of watching a movie and having a communal experience, but then also there's the personal experience. This movie is a movie that improves with age. And when it first came out, when it was first played in Cannes, I remember we were kind of horrified because the critics really didn't like the movie. The critic that really came out for this movie wasn't the New York Times, wasn't the LA Times, it was Roger Ebert. And he came out for this movie because what he saw, he even explained it to me. What he saw was, it's right now when you see movies today, a lot of what you're going to see in this movie, you've seen in recent movies. But imagine you've never seen this stuff before. The idea of a romantic fantasy that's borderline science fiction, that also has an actor, you know, if you're too young and you don't know Peter Falk, you're going to appreciate this movie a little less. Because Peter Falk plays himself in this fictional movie. And it's a combination of so many genres. And the idea of the angels looking over us, live in a world that's black and white, that the angels can see what's going on in each one of your brains as you're just sitting there, and you get to see that human beings are in color, and the angels are distanced. And in a way, they represent kind of intellectuals and intellectualism of what goes on in the brain, whereas the human beings represent living and working and the ups and downs. The higher beings know more, but they're not having as much fun. And there's something about life and living, whether it's great or whether it's bad, it's still living. And there's something to be said for that, as opposed to beings that aren't really living that human life or that tactile life we live. This movie it's very spiritual too, in a way that will speak to each of you in different ways. I remember a lot of critics dislike this movie because they're like, angels, give me a break, you know, angels is like, that's something that the highbrow critics, there's no place for. This movie has that thing that It's a Wonderful Life had, where it's kind of an intangible about people like you and me, but it's also slightly an entertainment. And what you're seeing is something you've never seen before. And I ask that you just relax. Throw away the cell phone, just relax, because you just give it a little patience and let it wash over you. And I am convinced it will blow you away. When we had this movie, we put it in a theater in Manhattan. Well, first of all, because the critics were very mixed on the film, we called up Amnesty International, and we figured out that Amnesty International are like an angel-like organization, and over people and oppressed people. And Amnesty International, for the first time, they'd never done it before, they did premieres of this movie in different parts in the country, which I think really helped the movie become successful. And Wim Wenders, if you don't know him, is a very spiritual filmmaker. He understands music, he understands the visual, he takes big risks, you know. Some films you'll say, oh my God, what's he doing? But other films you go, wow, like Paris, Texas, or this one. I remember in the beginning of Alice in the Cities, I saw that when I was in college, the protagonist is in a taxi and he looks up and he sees at night the World Trade Center, and this was 1974, right? And I remember that view of the World Trade Center, that slight, like 30 seconds of film, when the World Trade Center went down, that was played everywhere because it looked like this unnatural place that you kind of didn't know how to deal with. Well, Wim has that skill of representing these things in a very special way. There are a couple of other things. Something that's so major about this film for me is this film was in Cannes in 1987. It was made in 1986. The Wall came down in Berlin in 1989. This movie, over 2 years before the Wall came down, predicted the Wall to come down. Now, I'm telling you this before because it wouldn't be obvious to you, except I'd mention it to you, and when you watch the film, you're gonna see what I'm talking about, you know? And it's the coming together of the East and the West and the people and the angels. And for that reason, a lot of major artists have mentioned this. I saw someone recently mention, how could this film predict the coming down of the Wall? What an amazing work, you know? Also, it's important to mention the cinematographer was a gentleman by the name of Henri Alacan, and he was 80 years old, and he was one of the great cinematographers in the world. He was the cinematographer on Beauty and the Beast. He was the cinematographer on Rome and the Holiday, the William Wyler movie that was made in Italy. And we'll ask Wim this question. He did something so special with the black and white, with the silver and so forth, that it's a kind of black and white you've never seen before. I also want to mention a supporting player, this very old man. His name is Kurt Bois. And he was a man who was a major character actor in the German theater. And when Hitler came to power in 1933, he was forced to come to Hollywood. And he played all of these little roles, like hundreds of little roles in all these Hollywood movies. And I don't know if any of you realize that when you watch a movie like Casablanca, except for Humphrey Bogart in like the two leads and Claude Rains, literally the entire cast are immigrants that were cast out because of Nazi Germany of Casablanca. Books have been written about this. There's a recent one you should read. And Kurt Bois was the pickpocket at the beginning of Casablanca. And he plays this older gentleman that has a real philosophical view that will be meaningful for you. And then the thing about Peter Falk that is so amazing is that he's playing himself, and the word is that, at least the way Peter Falk told it, when we tried to get him to do press, he said, I'm not gonna do any press. I don't know what this movie's about. I was told to come and be myself, and I was myself, and it has this one scene where I'm not quite myself. And I said, I don't know if anyone's gonna go see it. And I remember many years later, we ran into him somewhere, and I mentioned it to him. We were responsible for the release of Wings of Desire, and he said, I just want to tell you fellas, for the first time in my life, I got people to stop me in the street and not say, hey, there's Columbo. They say, oh, hey, there's the angel. And the other thing is to understand about a movie like this. When a movie like this becomes part of the culture, it doesn't matter what the box office is. If it becomes part of the culture and the word of mouth travels with a movie influences so many things that, you know, you've probably seen things where you see a commercial, you see a play, you see a movie, and you say, they got that from this movie, got from that movie, because it becomes part of culture. And this is one of those movies. They did a remake with Nick Cage, which made a fortune, called City of Angels. Doesn't touch this movie, but it's a kind of a romantic comedy more. And there are aspects of this movie that, shots and things that happen in this movie that you'll see on television or you'll see in movies. But the fact of the matter is, I said to Chaz earlier, the reason I want to be here to watch this again is I don't know if I'll ever have a chance in my life again to see a movie like this in the ultimate 4K on a huge screen like the Virginia Theater, which is where it was meant to be seen. And knowing this movie, I am sure Roger is here with us, watching this movie with us. And so thank you so much, and I'm gonna sit there with you and let's enjoy the film.